Коллеги, всех прошу занять места.
Well,
Начинаем.
colleagues, please take your seats. We start.
Так, всем добрый день. Давайте я представлю.
Good afternoon. My name is Inna Golfman. I am Strategy Partners partner, and today we start the session, an alternative and/or an opportunity. We will have to define it, and we will talk about diversification of export and also new markets and the increase of consumption in this country. Export is growing versus 2021. However, the tasks are multifaceted. It is a diversification of the countries that we supply our fish to, and also introducing countries, markets for crab with the constraints in some countries and increase of consumption. I would like to request to switch off the music, which is at the background. Thank you. So we will have to find out what fish need the countries need, what are the strategies for promotion, and what should be done to diversify the supplies. I would like to introduce the speakers today. We have Mr. Sergey Levin, Deputy Minister of Agriculture of the RF. We have Mr. Ahmed Al-Sheher, head of the Economic and Trade Section, UAE, Embassy in Moscow, Russian Fishery Industry representative, Azamat Yusupov, Vice President of Ante Company, Sergei Senikov, Deputy Director of the International Affairs and PR, NAREBO, Andrei Dalnov, Head of the Center for Industry Expertise, Russian Agricultural Bank, Mr. Panin from the Russian Fishery Unit, and we have two online speakers, Dr. Ime Uma, Director of Fisheries and Aquaculture of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, and Mr. Rafael Barata, Foreign Trade Director, Frescato Company of Brazil. Before we start the official session, I would like to make a flash express questions. Which markets you consider important for increasing the export of the aquatic food? Which ones? Pollock? Okay. Savelli?
Только по одной стране можно назвать или нет?
Should we just mention one country or a few? A few. It is China, Korea, Western Africa. Okay, Azamat. I tend to agree. It is Southeast Asia and Middle East countries, Northern Africa. Sergey?
Ну, здесь все зависит от того, какая рыба, потому что это не моно.
All depends on what kind of fish, because it's not a mono product. Besides China, it is the Asian market, Middle East, Persian Gulf countries, and Africa. Africa is a large market. They have a wide range of possible products. Alexander cannot but agree with the opinion of the major fish-producing countries because they're dealing with this segment directly. Indonesia, South Korea, it is the countries with the high level of consumption. Then of course, the countries of Africa, because they're just joining the international market and they have a global potential of growth. Andrei? And so the neutral countries were named, and I would tend to agree that it is Asia, Middle East, Far East, and possible South America. I would like to give floor to Sergey. What's the structure of the fish export? What has changed and how the market will be developing in the future? Thank you. Let me start with a general review on the whole. The aquatic food products is one of the important foods that are traded in Russia as well. The turnover of the products is more than 160 million, 175. It is Cretaceous, fillet, frozen fish, and we are in the top 10 suppliers in the world in 2021, and the structure of our export, what is important, is quite an important part as our export on the whole. It is 20% of the total export. It is 6.7 billion USD, and we are growing. It is 25% more than in 2020. And the structure of export is concentrated. 85% is frozen fish and crustacean, and the importers are South Korea, China, and Japan. And it is different from what we had some 2 years ago, because 2 years ago it was China, but because of the COVID-19 constraints, there was a reduction of export to China by 60%, and we have re-forwarded the Chinese deliveries to other countries. That's why there was an increase in Korea by 35%, in whole at 75%, and in Japan 60. It was an increase of 60%. These are the major destinations that we have redirected the export flow. And of course, we undertake efforts to recover the Chinese exports. There was not a single working group meeting when those issues were not discussed. And the results are there. In the past 7 months, the export to China has increased by 65% in the first 7 months of 2022. And on the whole, the fish export is good. It has increased by 17% by July, and we have reached the level prior to COVID pandemic, that is 2019. New developments this year, of course, there are constraints and restrictions by the unfriendly states. This is a new wave of the difficulties. And on the face of it, the fish industry was an industry that direct sanctions were imposed. It was the US, EU, and the other, crustaceans and the other. And we note the negative dynamics of the export of crustacean. It dropped by 20%, and especially export to South Korea, the Netherlands. It is part of the EU and Japan. So our fishery industry, for the second time in the past 3 years, is facing the challenge of geographical diversification of its deliveries. And first, it was frozen fish to China, and the alternative was South Korea, Japan, and a number of the African countries. Now, the emphasis is placed on looking for the alternative to substitute the markets of crustacean. The situation is favorable on the whole because the demand is growing, and we are quite proactive. The fish industry is recovering after the pandemic quite vigorously, and in the near future, despite the slow recovery in 2020, we expect the higher growth rate, and the expectations are the growth rate will be more than 15%. That will provide incentives for the development of the trade. We do have the disadvantages of higher concentration by country, and I would like to remind you that 5 countries accounted for 85% of the Russian export, cost-wise. This is an advantage, a plus, because it means that we hold strong positions at the markets of the consumers, and then it's a vulnerability because any change in the consumption market call for vigorous work to diversification of their supplies. That's why, together with the Ministry of Fishing industry, we undertake efforts to diversify the routes. We have good capacity, good potential for that. And I failed to understand the question properly. I said Pollock, but that's what it is. I didn't understand that you meant countries. Crab positions are strong, and we are working on different countries and markets from some non-traditional, like the markets in South America, Brazil, and we have started the test supplies, but we expect the potential is quite high. And we cooperate with Nigeria quite proactively, with the African countries, with the UAE, and such a country that was not mentioned, Qatar, for example. UAE is quite active in importing crab, and we believe they're quite an efficient hub to supply it to Brunei and the other regional countries. The culture of consumption is linked to Norwegian salmon, and it is considered as a preferential product, and we had been negotiating quite a lot, and we believe that we have a good opportunities to supply trout and Atlantic salmon. And talking about promotion, we believe for us as the other countries, the potential is high for the high added value with accent on marketing and promotion. We believe that taking into account the structure of the exports and taking into account the primary products and processed product, our potential is quite. And just by exporting the high added value products, we can expect the increase in the export by 40%. So, summing up, despite all the difficulties, we believe the potential is high both to increase the volume and the diversification and increasing the share of the products that we can earn more. And we just regarding the prospects of the leaders in this area. That's how we regard the market. Brazil was mentioned, and right now I would like to request Rafael Barata to communicate with that, for him to talk about Brazilian import. And Sergey mentioned that 10,000 tons is the potential, but some time ago, 60,000 tons of Pollock were exported to Brazil. Then there was a down curve in export, and right now the export is quite low. What should the Russian companies do to get an access to such a new market for us as Brazil? And how could the Russian companies compete with the local companies that are producing such fish as whiting, hake, and the others? So, Rafael, will be grateful if you enlighten us.
Thank you.
Спасибо. Я подготовил презентацию о бразильском рынке и сотрудничестве с Россией тоже. Есть презентация.
Просьба включить презентацию.
So there is a request to switch on the presentation.
So my name is Rafael. I'm from Frescato, one of the main seafood companies in Brazil. And along with me, I have Carlos from the Association of Seafood Companies. So just a brief explanation of who we are. Abipesca, Carlos is the director of Abipesca. Abipesca is the association of the main seafood companies in Brazil. It was created about 8 years ago with the objective to promote the seafood consumption in Brazil and also to help Brazil become a leader on seafood as it is in other proteins. And Frescato, the company I work for, is a very traditional company here. It's been in the market for almost 80 years. It was one of the founders of Abipesca, and we have a very strong distribution in Brazil of different kinds of seafoods, all kinds. I'm going to give you a little overview of what is Brazil right now. Brazil is the largest country in South America. It's the 5th largest country in the world by size, and it has the 6th biggest population in the world with 212 million people. Our economy is always among the 10 biggest economies in the world. Talking a little bit about the GDP, the last decade, we've been suffering a little with some crisis. We had a strong crisis in 15 and 16. And when we were about to start to recover, the pandemic hit the world and we suffered again as everyone else. In 2022, the forecast is for us to grow 2.7%, which is still a small growth, but compared to the situation of the world right now, it is a pretty reasonable number. One important aspect of the economy is something similar that happened in many other countries, is the currency exchange. Brazilian money, the real lost value, especially when the pandemic started. And this is an important component for the imports, of course. So that any import became more expensive with the more expensive US dollar. And another important figure is the inflation. The inflation has been high here the last years as everywhere else in the world. For this year, the government is managing to control it a bit more. The expectancy is that we'll finish the year in 6.5%, 6.4%, and for next year should be a little less. However, the inflation on food items is higher than the average inflation. So this made a big impact in seafood consumption in Brazil, as I'm going to show you more ahead. When we talk about seafood in Brazil, as I said, is a very strong producer, is the biggest producer of other proteins in the world. So Brazil is very big in chicken, beef, and pork. And those items are much cheaper in Brazil than seafood. So that makes the Brazilian population very oriented into these other proteins because they are attractive in terms of price. And when you see the economy with data like I showed before, high inflation, some depression on the economy, people automatically move into cheaper items. So the seafood consumption suffered a lot in the previous years because of the junction of an economy that was suffering and the more attractive prices of the other proteins. But on the other hand, you can see this as an opportunity for growth once the economy recovers and the people have a better buying power, they will for sure buy more seafood. So right now we are talking about a seafood consumption in Brazil of 10 kilos per capita, 10 to 11, while the world average is 20. So there's a huge room for growth. Just a quick example here. Nowadays, if you look at a chicken breast fillets in the supermarket, you will find them for 18 reais, while the hake fillets from Argentina will be like 57 reais per kilo. So 3 times the price. And we're not even talking about super premium seafood, just a regular fish fillet. Anyways, when we talk about imports, Brazil in terms of seafood, is very much dependent on the imports. Brazil, in terms of production, has been getting stronger on shrimp, Vietnamese shrimp, and tilapia farming. But the wild species that are caught here, we don't have a huge quantity of harvesting. So the imports are very, very important to Brazil. And so here are the figures for the past decade. And just an important number is that the levels for 2022 are going to be about the same as 2019, also, the same levels as before the pandemic. However, with a much higher currency exchange. So even though the products are more expensive, we're still going to import the same volumes. When we talk about products, just showing the 2022 numbers until July, the biggest item, of course, here is the salmon, the fresh salmon from Chile. And this is a lot driven by the sushi market. Brazil has the biggest biggest population of Japanese people out of Japan. They are located in Brazil. So they started this culture of sushi here in Brazil, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And today you can find a sushi restaurant anywhere. Any corner you go, you have sushi. So the salmon is the most affected item because of that. But of course, it helps consume others as well, as the sushi doesn't use only salmon. Then you have sardines that go basically into canning. The others are many species, but the main one here would be the pangasius. Then you have hake, saithe, blue shark, squid, cod. And in the very end, you have the pollock that I put here, and I'm going to show you on a specific slide about it. Just the origins very quickly. Chile with the salmon, Morocco and Oman basically with the sardines for canning. Argentina, the main item is hake. Vietnam with the pangasius. China with a little bit of pollock, squid, and some surimi. Norway and Portugal with the cod, and Taiwan and Uruguay would be the blue shark, would be the main items they sent, and some oil fish as well. When we look at the pollock, what happens with the pollock, Brazil started to do imports from China of seafood in around 2007. Brazil had never bought pollock before that. And China came with the pollock. It was a huge success. Cheap item, white fish, pinbone out, and the Chinese with all the flexibility in terms of presentations they could make. And it was a big success, cheap item. However, the Chinese, they were offering to Brazil at that time a product with chemical treatment, which was not declared and was not allowed by Brazilian authorities. So for a few years, Brazil was buying huge quantities until people started, especially the Brazilian authorities, started to learn what was being done and what was happening. And then they started to control the chemical treatment very strictly. When that happened, of course, they had to remove the chemicals and the prices went up. And as the prices went up, the consumption started to decrease, and the people started to move into other fishy species, going back to the hake, going back to the blue shark, and going back to even the pangasius. So in the very end here for last year, I just show you an example. USA only sent 21 tons, basically one container of pollock fillets to Brazil. USA has been trying to sell the natural pollock, but it's been hard. And I don't want to disappoint anyone with this information. I just want to show you that Brazil does have a huge market for white fillets, but we are a poor country. We have a population that is very oriented into prices. And what the people end up always doing is comparing the price between pollock, between hake, and between blue shark. And there's always this balance. Once one is cheaper, they move more to this one, and then they don't buy the other one. So we would have to see how costs are to see what volume can be done into Brazil. But of course, it's a big population. And if it's not a price item, there is a niche for it, but it just won't be as big as it could be if the prices are attractive. Okay, and just as final thoughts, as I said, I know the Pollock is one of the main items of interest for the Russians to export here. I just explained about how the price situation works, but as I said, Brazil is a very large country, 200 million people. It's the country is the economic situation of the people is unbalanced. So we have a small group of very rich people, but the small group being 5% is already 10 million people. So these 10 million people, they can buy many expensive items as well. So if for some case the Pollock doesn't work as expected, Brazil can always study other opportunities for high-end products, crab, or whatever you feel that you are competitive. And I leave my contacts. I'm free to receive any questions and to help with whatever you need. Me and Carlos from Abipesca. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael. Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. Now, I'd like to ask Mr. Tarkofin to comment on Rafael's report and speech, and please tell us about how you entered alternative market and how can we be competitive in terms of the price on those markets, and what do Russian companies need to do in order to increase their volume, their supply into those markets. Inna, thank you. I will start with responding to Rafael. In 2022, this 21 ton you can add from Russia. We can send you high quality fillet of Pollock. The secret is simple. It's about the price. Brazil is surrounded by hake from Argentina. It is very close proximity, and tilapia production. Tilapia is high quality, and there are some cultural differences. You have to bring this message across to the people, and the price is the defining factor. So how to sell in Brazil in a very fast way? You have to sell Pollock at a lower price. This is the game that could be played by us, but let's talk about entering the market as I see it. So we ask ourselves a question: where can we sell? There is a direct ban on import from Russia, on export from Russia in the US. And where can we sell Russian fish then? Then the response to this question is quite simple as well. We can sell where there are many people. And the second point is that we need people who love eating fish, and this is a kind of a habit that takes time to be established in their population. And the third factor is that we need people, the middle class, that will be ready to pay for this. So where people can pay for that. I will reiterate one more time about those parameters. In Asia, about 65% of fish is being consumed there. About 30% is being eaten in China. And so one strong country, densely populated country, is eating the majority of fish products. Talking about the middle class, the forecast says that the growth primarily will be observed in Asian countries. There are three factors. There are people there. They earn a sufficient amount of money, and they are used to eating fish. So our primary focus is China. Let's talk about Pollock. We are focusing on it. And of course, Russian fishing is not only about pollock, but about 1/3 of fish products that are caught in Russia is pollock. And for 100,000 tons of fish that is caught around the world, a large part of it is pollock. Let's recall what happened in our industry 10 years ago. And like a pollock that has had its head cut off, and there were two options to sell it. And the first one is Russia, where people are used to see it in stores, and the second country is China, because they have been building their processing capacity, but they were not ready to consume pollock on a regular basis, and it served more like a processing hub. After there were some perturbations in China, and we asked our director about Plan B. As industry, as a company, we are producing the major part of our products for pollock, and he said that Plan B and Plan C and Plan A, all of those plans are China. And let's talk about what we should be selling. When entering new markets, we should study new products. And Rafael was talking about the types of fish they're eating in Brazil. For example, sushi, the Japanese community that prefers that in Brazil. And we see significant growth in this segment. We, as industry, were producing pollock without its head, and this was an ideal geometry of this pollock body, and all the industry was aimed at producing this fillet independently, like the deep sea processing. So that was the whole cycle for one product, for one market. And now the industry is facing the need to reorient and rechannel those flows. So how can we reallocate 1 million tons of fish? We need to sell pollock fillet to people who are not used to eating that. 5 years ago, the executive management has decided, when building new fleet, to reorient our plants for surimi production. So we did not stop fillet production. Our plants give us the flexibility to work both with fillet and surimi, the white, quite universal ingredient. And for crab sticks, it is one of the most widespread ingredient, well known for Russians. So we made this alternative bet on Asia, and a part of the Russian catch that was channeled into the production of the fillet for Europe and for Russia. We started using that for surimi. We were not waiting for anyone. We commissioned 10 vessels, and by 2025 we expect to have about 1/3 of 230,000 tons of pollock. So we will be giving new product to new markets. So you can offer new products for people who are ready to pay for that. And I'm running out of time. I understand that. The last question, what can we do in Russia? I think that fundamentally, Russia is not different from other countries. You can offer good products. It is not only about it is not about offering any fish product. We would like to make our consumer happy. We would like to give him a healthy product, some product that he or she would like to buy not only once, but then to make it part of the everyday routine. So we need to pay special attention to further development of certain aspects. We are lagging behind from pork and chicken, the products that are available on the market. And here, the processing industry plays a very important part, and I think that its development in Russia is insufficient. So we all need to render the support to this industry to make this product quite popular with the Russian population and to make those products tasty. We need to work on new types of products, and that is the way to new market and to develop new products. And now I'd like to note the important part that is played by the state, the large-scale support that is needed on the part of the state. It's about promoting fish products, popularizing it among the population. We just need to tell people about nutrients that are contained in fish, and then the task of our company, of manufacturers, of processing companies, we will be offering this high-quality product when they are ready, when they know the benefit that this product can bring. Saveli, thank you very much. Now, I'd like to turn to potential markets. United Arab Emirates, Ahmad Al-Sheikhi is today with us. I'd like to ask you about the potential of import into United Arab Emirates. There is a huge potential for crab import and fish import. How can this country be used in this potential and re-export into other countries? Ahmed, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you for inviting me today. I represent United Arab Emirates, a hub for export and re-export for products. Regarding the seafood and the fish market, I would like to say that UAE consume more than 220,000 tons annually from fish and seafood products. 70% of these come from abroad. We import 70% of our seafood. In this case, there is a huge potential for the Russian companies to be part of the export or import seafood to UAE, especially with the high logistics services we have in UAE, with the free zones, with the storages that can be implemented there. Other part of that is also the aquaculture farms, fish farms. We in UAE now have about 15 fish farms that produce annually hundreds of thousands of tons of seafood. So this is also a potential area where we could increase these fish farms. We also, on the other side, import and re-export to other countries, especially the Gulf region and North Africa, Asia, and to Europe. It's no doubt that UAE have a major hub for these logistics things, for export and import, re-export, and there will be a huge potential for in this regard. I see the number of companies, Russian companies that involve in the seafood are huge, and I always invite them to come to us, and we will always be supportive and to them, to attract them to the UAE market, which is the market of the entire region, not only the UAE, but the entire region. In that regard, these companies can open their branches there or establish a new joint venture with other UAE partners. We have legislations and law that allow all these foreign companies to be part in the UAE market, and that will also increase the volume of trade between our two countries. Thank you very much.
Спасибо большое. Вы знаете, я
Thanks a
хотела
lot.
передать слово Азамату Юсупову.
I would like to
Азамат,
give
вы
the floor
производите
to
краба в
Azamat
Арабские
Yusupov.
Эмираты.
You
Как
are
вы видите потенциал по
importing crab
наращиванию экспорта
to
туда? С какими
UAE.
сложностями вы
What's the
сталкиваетесь?
capacity of export to the UAE, and what are the challenges that you face? Indeed, we do have an experience of supplying our products to the Emirates. And me, personally, I paid a visit to the UAE to look closely into the potential of the market to sell crab and crab products. Of course, we should take into account the specificity of the Middle East countries and the culture of consumption. As of now, we can see the potentially the capacity of Dubai both as a consumption market and using the potential of this country as a transportation and logistics hub for all the Middle East and the countries of North Africa and partially Asian countries. I would like to note that I have observed quite an interesting specificity. It is using mostly freshly frozen products by the chefs, by the cooks. And that's what's happening in Japan. But we believe, and I negotiating almost every day, and even today, for example, I have been negotiating with some companies from Dubai. They are waiting for our products, and 5 containers are on their way to Dubai now, to our warehouse over there, for us to start the sales in this region or to the neighboring countries. Today, with the help of the representative of the Ministry of Agriculture, we were approached by a company from Qatar, and they offered their cooperation on the eve of the World Cup, Soccer World Cup. They offered their cooperation. There is a high potential, and we should go ahead and trying to redirect the flows of the export, and we can regard the products from a different angle, and to re-engineer the logistics on the whole. right now. We should redirect our flows. And of course, the Southeast Asia has its own potential. China, high capacity, but we shouldn't overlook such countries as Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand. The representatives of those countries got in touch with us, and we should meet the demand, not only in traditional products like frozen products. And I agree to what Oleg has mentioned. We should provide processed products, meat, minced meat, and live products. And we have considered the logistics of supplying live crabs from Murmansk all the way to the Far East. And in the future, after there is an increase of the trips to China, we will start the deliveries of live products, live crab. We have built a small storage hub, and we can store 40 tons of live crab, and we can send between 5 and 15 tons by air to different destinations, Qatar and Dubai, and it would be live crabs. It's very convenient when there is a consumption culture for seafood in certain countries, when there is a culture of consumption in Asia, in Southeast Asia. But the Middle East has a high capacity on their own, and we shouldn't disregard it. And we should undertake efforts to make our products popular and promote the products in the other regions. It is true that China per se, the coastal areas have that type of culture. If you move up north or the central part of China, they do not have the culture of consumption of seafood. That's why we should promote it, and we should take the example, the case of Norwegian salmon. And Norwegian salmon is #1 in many countries from the point of view of consumption, because the state was involved in promotion, and the results are tangible now. So I believe that there is a high potential to promote the products, and we should leave no stone unturned to use different forms of logistics. We have used the Northern Sea route to ship the products from the northwest of Russia to the Far East. So logistics plays an important role, and it affects the price and affects its availability, accessibility. We shouldn't disregard the domestic market, and the local consumers should be given an opportunity to taste high-quality product, and not only in the way it is popular, like the crab from Kamchatka crab, but the other products. That's why we have adopted a program for promotion of our products into the retail chains, e-commerce, and not only Kamchatka crab, but Apelio crab. It is not that famous, but its price is lucrative, and its taste is quite luring, and that's why we will offer the product for the domestic market, despite the fact that maybe it's the potential for the crab is not as high in Russia as it is in China. But the situation is changing. People get accustomed to it, and giving it a try, people would like to try it, to taste it again. Thank you, Azamat. I would like to get back to the discussion on Pollock, and I would like to request Dr. Ima Umo. What product is expected at the market in Nigeria, and how should Russian companies get to the market of Nigeria? Mr. Umo?
Так, давайте сейчас еще раз попробуем.
We'll try to communicate again.
Так, ладно, давайте пока коллега подключается.
Okay. Meanwhile, I would like to give a floor to Mr. Sergei Senikov. So, what's the experience of Noreba company? What is necessary to do to increase export? And so, what's the situation with export and domestically? Thanks.
Да, мы постараемся кратко рассказать о нашем
In
видении.
a presentation, let me tell you about our vision. A few words about our company. We are one of the largest holdings in Russia. We have the fishing fleet in North Atlantic and Central, and in the western part of Africa, in the Far East and the southeast part of Asia. And the number of the aquatic products is some 40, and it's quite a versatile range of products. On the average, we used to supply our products to some 40 countries, so the coverage is quite high. So, talking about the geography breakdown, we would like to draw your attention to the following region. Europe and the UK of the market is still here. It is not closed. It is the US and Canada market that is closed, but the rest of the world is still open. The situation is getting difficult, more difficult in some areas. As far as the American market is concerned, we still keep Mexico, Brazil, but it's not the supplies of raw materials, but the supplies of the products that is preferred at this particular market. Talking about the products, and clip fish for Mexico, we produce it in Murmansk. It is the traditional products, and it is supplied to many countries, such as Portugal and Spanish-speaking countries, whitefish, and to Brazil, and if it's Pollock, we can produce the product from clip fish. Argentina and Chile have the production of their whitefish, and if you want to sell whitefish, you have to consider price, and you have to explain why cod or pollock or haddock is more attractive. And
он тоже достаточно сильно сегментирован по
The
спросу, по видам.
market in some other countries is well segmented.
Поэтому традиционно
That's
покупают большой объем мороженой
why
экологической рыбы для производства консервов или консервы сделаны из этого.
frozen food and canned food is supplied to the South Asia and Africa. And the Nigeria, for example, are prepared to buy clip fish, or it could be dried fish. It is a product with the protein, fish protein. There is a demand for more expensive fish in Africa. It is the southern part of Africa. And we can think about the products that will be sold at the retailer chains. Persian Gulf countries are virtually all the countries, and they are the purchasers of the Russian fish, and we should act individually from these countries. And there is no one purchaser that will be buying fish en masse. So the approaches should be diversified to find the proper partners. Caribbean Sea. There are prospective buyers for whitefish. China, which is viewed as an exporter. They export a lot, but some of the exporters do not export their own fish. Russia could climb higher if we will be taking into account only own fish exporters. China consumes a different fish internally. It is halibut, and it could be mackerel and oily, fatty fish, and they might be used for processing and canning. So selling cod or haddock in China as it is sold in Europe is not possible. And the segment of the economy in China that is switching to the European way of life, and that's why their own gastronomical preferences, but the major part of China eats a different fish. Million tons of carp are grown in China, and they are consumed domestically. It is also consumption of fish, but it is somewhat different. And I think it will be very difficult to increase the volume of export to China for domestic market. But still, China is big. So what is necessary to do for the development of alternative markets from our point of view? A number of points. It is important to have support from the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the trade offices, Minister of Agriculture, and it is necessary to know what are the phytosanitary requirements in the particular country. It is necessary to find the partners, common grounds with business in these countries, and then to think about the supplies depending on what you can offer for those countries. Two, it is important to know the tradition and the gastronomic preferences in the region. And it's pointless to sell the fish that they produce themselves. It could not be the best idea. And I give this example when they talk about the demand in the market and the economy. Take two countries, Portugal and Germany. And Germany has the strongest economy, and Portugal is considered to be weak. but the demand for fish is 14, 15, and in Portugal it is 50 kgs per head, even 60. It may be even 60. But it doesn't mean that these consumers have a lot of money. It's just that 8 out of 10 people buy fish every day, and it's a tradition. The fish is different, and you will have to understand what fish you can sell to Portugal and to Germany. And Norwegian are producing a lot of clip fish, supplying it to Portugal, and they process it, producing bacalhau. You cannot order it in Norwegian, though they're suppliers of these particular raw materials. They have sushi.
So there is this connection between the culture and tradition of consumption, and you have to take that into consideration if you want to be successful there. Also, their processing facilities and their presence in this region is vitally important when you want to supply that to the market. There are some companies with a well-known brand in Brazil. For example, Portuguese brands are very famous, and when you want to enter with your own brand, it may be very complicated. So for each case, you have to take into consideration the end market and all the specificity. Also, the limitations for the import, what I mentioned, phytosanitary, customs constraints, and limitations that are present at this or that market, and it slows down the process of sales. And what we saw in Brazil when they limited the import of fish products, not only from Russia, but also from other countries with the use of Russian feedstock and raw materials. And the situation has improved, but it's still not so good to have smooth delivery to Brazil. And also their familiarity of the product and whether your brand is a well-known one or not, it will have an impact on that. In China, we see the confirmation, for example, with the Atlantic cod. When they buy it with another name, they perceive that as a different fish, and probably next time they will not buy it. So there are some specific features that you have to study, that you have to take into consideration. In Japan, it can be the same fish, but 2 different brands. So here, the knowledge of culture of this region will play a very important part. Now, a few words about what needs to be done to increase the number of supply and deliveries in Russia. And an idea has been voiced. It is not a simple task. As for the capacity of Pollock, it is about 100,000, 150,000 tons, and this is the task of the state. So you need to promote the consumption of fish. Of course, you have to work on the logistics. Logistics should be faster and cheaper. We need to have more high-quality storage facilities if we want to work with high-quality products and deliver them in a faster way. In trade chains, we need to work on the quality of products on the shelf and also to work on the quality of the freezing refrigerator facilities. And we see that this process is ongoing, and we see some state-of-the-art equipment. And in Europe, they have thermostat in refrigerators that shows you the temperature. And if you open it, after 10 seconds, it has to be closed, and this strict control in shops, in stores, ensures high quality products, and it improves their situation with the sales. So we need to interact with chains, and it is also about people who sell it and explain the cord. For example, if you want to buy cord with the head, and no one will be able to do that in a correct way. In Europe, for example, there are specialists who can do it, and that is what we should be striving for in future. Also, the development of the internet market, it is an interesting task that we have to perform. It is not so simple. There are some online sales in some online chains where you can buy fish and along with other products. But if it is only about buying fish, the profitability of such platforms is quite doubtful, and the supply of fish for state needs, it's an important aspect. And here I think that we need to elaborate strict requirements, because we need large volumes and stable deliveries. I would like to focus now on the consumption of fish products among younger generations, adolescents, and children. It is not a Russian problem. It is a worldwide problem. In Norway, for example, it has been widely discussed why children don't eat fish products. We need to promote the cooking of fish. And, for example, I like cooking fish. It is fast and it is tasty. We need to provide fish products in the kindergartens, in schools. And of course, we need here a ready-made product, already cooked one, that we can bring to schools, to enterprises. And it is quite simple, and the assortment is quite wide, and Russia is capable to cover all the needs and to offer various types of fish so that it can look interesting for children. That is how we can make it so that children will be used to fish and to eating fish since childhood. So this is it for my presentation, and thank you for your attention. Thank you, Sergey. Indeed, these measures should be taken. Let's try to get our Nigerian colleague connected once again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Да,
I,
соответственно,
first of all, want to really apologize for my inability to connect the first time you put me on. Well, due to some technical facilities that are happening here. First of all, I want to really appreciate you for inviting me to this very important meeting. Last year, I was in St. Petersburg in Russia with my colleagues, and I want to really appreciate you for inviting me again this time around. My name is Ime Umo. I'm the Director of Fisheries and Aquaculture, Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development here in Nigeria, West Africa. Nigeria is a very large country with a population of about 208 million people. And the total fish consumption and requirement is 3.6 million metric tons per annum. But we are only able to produce about 1.2 million metric tons in all the sectors, the aquaculture, the artisanal, and also the industrial marine. In the aquaculture sector, we have been able to get a breakthrough on the issue of catfish and tilapia. And also we have shrimps and prawns and crabs that are being cultivated, farmed here in Nigeria. But the demand is very huge, about 2.5 million metric tons per annum. And as a country, we develop policies and programs for sustainable fisheries production and development in the country. And every year, we give out a quota allocation to companies that are interested in importing fish into the country. And this is done for us to supplement the local fish production. And this, for 2019, with the demand of 2.5 million metric tons, we're only able to bring in about 419 metric tons. Because of pandemic in 2020, we only brought in about 400,000 metric tons. And in 2021, we increased the value to 512,000 metric tons. And this actually caused a deficit, and we are not able to beat the demand. That is why last year I was in St. Petersburg in the Seafood Expo for us to see how we can invite our investors and Russian exporters to see how they can bring in products into the country. And I have been having discussions and interaction with Stanish Gorbachev that is here, and they have been having a series of discussions with Russian companies that should be able to bring in fishery products into the country. And every year we give out a quota. A quota system is for us to see how we can regulate the number of companies that will be able to bring in the fishery products into the country. And as a matter of fact, the fishery products that we are encouraged to be brought in include the pollock, the blue whitings, the herrings, the hake, the mackerel, the saladina, the sardines, and even croaker should be brought into the country. And for some years, we have been having discussion with Russian companies to see how they can bring in these products. And as a country, we have a lot of streams that we also export to other countries of the world, especially the EU and the United States. But what we are particularly important in our discussion is that before you can bring in any products, we have to certify the cold chain, your cool room, and even your facilities, so that we'll be in conformity with the phytosanitary requirements of the country. We inspect your cool rooms, we inspect your facilities, and also give you what we call the license for you to bring in. And strictly, we have a policy of those believe that for us to give you a large quantity of product for you to import into the country, we must go into what we call backward integration, because we want to encourage aquaculture production. And any company that has gone into this policy of backward integration, we also give large quantity for import. And I remember that in 2019, in 2020, and even 2021, and even this year, 2022, we have given one company as large as 120,000 metric tons to import, while other smaller companies, we can also give about 50,000 metric tons, 10,000 metric tons, and even 2,000 metric tons to bring into the country. But most of these companies are not able to meet up the requirements because of one problem or the other. But we are still discussing with these companies to see how they can meet up the requirements in terms of the forex, in terms of the foreign exchange. But in terms of the pollock and other fillets and other products that are being imported from Russia, Nigeria is a consuming country because we know that fish and fishery products is the cheapest source of protein. And there are so many people that are depending only on fish in terms of the school feeding program of the federal government, in terms of the poorest of the poor, and in terms of other policies that is being developed by the government, to make sure that fish is being grown and is being distributed to every nooks and corners of the country. As I mentioned, Nigeria has 36 states, and about out of these 36 states, about 7 of these states are completely in the coastal areas, and we have a large marine resources, which we believe that the other local fish products are also there in the country. So as a nation, we encourage importation of frozen fish, and we believe that Russia can take advantage of the liberal policy of the government and see how they can increase the fish import into the country. As a country, we also have a policy of seeing how we can stop IUU fishing. So that means that any fish that is being imported into the country, we have checks in terms of the Navy, in terms of the custom, in terms of looking at the quarantine, and also in terms of NAVDAC to see whether they are wholesome for consumption. And when these agencies certify the fish, we also subject the fish to our laboratories, EU certified laboratories in about two states in the country, here in Abuja and also in Lagos. And when they are fully certified, we push it to the market. We also ensure that the cold chain is being maintained. Cold chain in such a way that we have inspectors that regularly go and inspect the condition of the fish, whether it is maintained at a particular temperature that's been set in the country. And if any company is not in conformity with the regulation and policy that's being developed, we immediately close down those companies. But for the past 2-3 years, Russia has been very compliant, and Russia has been a country that we have been doing business with. And even last year, that was in St. Petersburg, I encouraged Russian companies to come to Nigeria, import fish into the country, and we are ready to do business with Russia. So I want to really appreciate you, and we believe that moving forward, we'll be able to do a lot of business, a lot of imports, and for us to meet up the demand, because the demand in the country is huge. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. To conclude and to summarize, Nigeria has a huge potential. It is a large hub into Africa, and colleagues are calling for the Russian companies not only to import there, but also to develop aquaculture on the market and other opportunities. And let's get back to our internal domestic potential. I have a question to the audience. How often, dear colleagues, do you eat fish? Please raise your hands if you eat fish more than 3 times per week. 3 times per week, per day, it will be excessive. Well, quite a lot. Of course, it is not a very representative audience. You have to ask that at a chicken forum. We will do that for sure. And now I'd like to pass the floor to Andrei Delnov and to talk about our domestic market. Because we all eat fish, but if we take a look at a younger generation, fewer and fewer young people are interested in cooking fish. They are looking for new products. So what will be in high demand on the Russian market? How will it be modified? What is it moving towards to? Thank you.
Presentation, please.
Другая.
Not mine. Give us another one. All right, this one will do.
Удается найти?
Do you...
Я тогда начну.
Okay, do you manage to find it? Okay, let me list you the ideas. One of the ideas of my presentation is we should not analyze the situation at the food product market individually when we are talking about such issues as food security and protein consumption. The alternative for me is the alternative to the export of fish and meat and milk products to the domestic market.
Говоря о динамике потребления животных продуктов,
Dynamics of the consumption of the animal products. It is the prediction as well, prediction figures. We can see that the fish products consumption will be growing. What is important for the fishery is that the meat consumption is higher now than it was before, higher than in the Soviet Union or in the Kiev and Rus or whenever. And milk consumption is growing as well, and it will all cause difficulties for the fish industry. One of the drivers of the market is aquaculture. If we view the figures of all the animal food products, we can see that the growth on the general is 5%, and aquaculture is only behind Turkey. Turkey consumption is growing as well. Structure of consumption, breakdown by countries. The structure could be different in different countries. Of course, the tastes, convenience, and traditions are the factors that affect the structure. We can see that there are countries with the equitable possibilities of access to the sea, but the structure of consumption is different. Like, say, take Norway and the US. Similar, but different in consumption. Export structure, we keep saying that we export raw materials, but less headed fish. Russia is specialized in exporting frozen headed fish, and Chile export processed products. But such strategies could be different if you target the domestic market. If you compare the prices for protein, and over here are different products, and we can see that poultry is the winner, and then herring and pollock is far away, and salmon has the highest price, but the taste is the factor that is the driver of the consumption of salmon. Convenience of consumption. It is clear that export affects the illustration. Poultry is the component of the price in gutting, and over here the sausage is also a factor, and the sausages, different types of sausages, has 40% of poultry, and the fish is not as convenient and ready to cook, ready to heat, is in terms of convenience, the poultry in this case and chicken is the most convenient out of the convenience food. Talking about the concept of the unified market, we can say that the producers at the unified market compete for the share of consumption, and the mature market has PR companies. And how these companies work, if we read the titles of the New York Times, and over here it is the
Буквально демонизировали, да, красное мясо.
Beef is the bold line, and the light line is the butter. And in the noughties, the situation started changes. People tend to realize that margarine is not a clean alternative, but it is something not healthy, though since 30s margarine was positioned as the correct and healthy substitute of the animal fats. The same situation is happening in the oils. They have added the environmental factor to it into the package to affect the market. So the Russian market is more mature, and there will be companies coming to it. Hopefully, their activity will be positive, and their activity will be aimed at increasing their product. There are a number of the examples for the manufacturers of the fatty protein. It is the California Association. It has got milk, English company, to increase the consumption of love seafood. Salmon was not initially Japanese, and it became a Japanese staple food as a result of the efforts taken by Norway and activities of the marketing companies. And if you are in the center of Japan, and then over there it's you will be treated not to salmon but something different. It is salmon in Tokyo. It is big money, but it's good investment. And if the producers will start thinking about that kind of promotion marketing companies in Russia, then the effects will be good for the fishing industry. And the Bank, we are prepared to give you a helping hand. We have quite a good experience of managing marketing. And I think it will be useful both for the industry and for the consumers. So that's the proposal. Thank you.
Спасибо большое. У нас осталось немного времени. Я хотела бы попросить Александра Панина сказать свое мнение.
Not much time left. Alexander Panin, do you agree to the trends of consumption that Andrea has been talking about?
Чтобы у нас в России ели то, что мы производим. Спасибо.
What shall we do for them to increase the consumption of fish? I am very happy that the trends are indeed those that Bank has been telling, and I wish we would be consuming 20 kgs per capita. Unfortunately, now we are at place 20 plus as fish consumers, and we are falling behind such countries as Norway, Malaysia, South Korea, or take Portugal, for example. In Korea, they are 57, and we have 22. That's what the official figures are. And the experts believe it is even less. It is some 15 kgs per capita. So we will be trying to increase, but I think we can achieve that kind of indicators of 20 kgs by 2030. So where are we now as far as fish consumption is concerned? So the bracket, the basket of the rations, fish, and has 2%. As far as all the expenses are concerned for food, the share is not growing fast. More than that, the growth itself could be considered a positive aspect, but one big but. The driver of the increase of the share is not the increase of consumption. Consumption is stagnating. We are consuming less by 26% to 22% as far as in terms of raw materials, and this indicator is at plateau now. And the problem is that the main driver of the increase of the expenses is the price of the fish products, which is growing. Over the past 3 years, the expenses has grown from 433 rubles to 557 per kilo of the products in the basket, but they did not affect the consumption. At the same time, if we look at the absolute figures, then there is a fluctuation regionally. In Russia, the average, they spend 557 with the average of 822. In Tyumen, it is 1,416 rubles with the average price of 838. And in Altai, the people and in Tiva, they do not eat fish at all. They spend only some 128 rubles per year. And it is an indication of different consumer preferences and accessibility of fish for the population. This country is large, and the marketing tools to promote fish should be different for different regions. So, the consumption versus the other food products. And this is one of the big problems. And that's one of the reasons why the fish consumption is not growing. We can see that the consumption has dropped by 26%, whereas the other products like vegetables, vegetable oil, meat products has grown, and bread and milk and sugar, if they went down, not as drastically as fish products. So, what happened to the prices and why the negative dynamics, negative trends? The graph shows that the prices for meat, poultry, was growing in this as the same vector of the purchasing capacity as income of the Russian population. Fish was growing faster. So we can state that right now fish is less accessible for the Russian consumers, and that's why the consumption is less. And this is not the only key factor, however, it's one of the principal ones. And we are similar to what the things are in Brazil, and the income of our citizens does not make it possible to compete at the world markets. And while wild fish is one of the elements of the world markets, and we should bear it in mind. The main reasons why there is a reduction of consumption, one of the reasons is the growth of prices higher than inflation, than the growth of the foreign currencies, because fish is export-oriented product, and that's why the price for fish and fish products is linked to the exchange rate. Then we compete with the milk and meat, and we are losing for a number of reasons, as the colleagues said. The fish products cannot give the range of the processed products. If we look at the poultry, at the chicken, which was some 15 years ago, and now we can see that poultry products diversity is quite high, which is not the case with fish. Some individual companies present over here promote the fish products. They try to diversify the products, and 3 companies are present in the panel. These companies, they invest to have new products on the offer for the Russians, but the general fish self is no good. It is the fridges in the stores and cheap products, expensive products do not find their place at the shelves of the stores, and then the technological backwardness of the companies. Some of them are Baltiski, some of them are leaders like Baltiski, Berek. They invest into the production, but without the support of the state, it's not possible to achieve progress. And the modernization, upgrading of the processing facilities and infrastructure is needed. Without that, it won't be possible to diversify the product and increase the consumption. In 2021, the Fishery unit made a study of the market, and the Platforma research company was involved. We studied the consumer, and we studied the views of the consumers, of what products the consumers think are missing, and we uncovered the products that does not make it possible to increase the consumption at the market, at the domestic market, and which is an alternative to the export supplies. The export supplies face difficulties now. And quite a lot of people, 80%, believe that it is important to consume fish regularly, but the consumers do not rate the quality as satisfactory. 46% believe that the fish products got worse. I think it is too subjective opinion linked to the increase of price without any change to the quality. 37% of the respondents eat fish every week, which is not enough. And 56 would like to increase the consumption, but 75% of those are prevented from doing that by too high price. Three typical models of conduct. One is contemporary, transitional, and the Soviet type. And if we analyze what these three models of behavior, models of conduct evaluate, assess the consumption of feed, the contemporaries do not have the traits, the habits of consuming fish, and it was not brought up in the kindergartens or in school, and there's virtually no fish in kindergartens and schools, or it is of such a quality that 90% of fish that finds its place to the dish is just finds its place in the garbage. It is not tasty, it is not technologically good. That's why the youngsters, the youths are not interested. And the people of mid-age group are claiming that the price does not conform with the quality, and ready-to-cook, ready-to-eat products are not there, and at least it's not that much. That's why the people are not satisfied that what is available at the market. The senior citizens, I'll compare the quality to what they had at the time of the Soviet Union. I don't think the quality was better. There, I think it's just a piece of the historic memory. I think the specialized stores, ocean stores, were better than we have now. It's just the historic memory of the senior citizens. So, why less fish consumption? It is the high price, low quality, not satisfactory for the consumers, and the inconvenience for the life.
So what are the conclusions in the dynamics of consumption? The limits on the catch and the prices are growing worldwide. International competition for water bioresources, low income in Russia make fish not so available, less available for Russian citizens. Insufficient development of infrastructure is another hurdle, and it all entails difficulties and uneven prices, and the conditions are not equal for regions, and that is why we see this gap between regions in Russia, insufficient state measures of support and insufficient demand and consumption compared to poultry, to meat, what has been already mentioned by the representative of Rossельхознадзor, 80 kilos per person, 240 liters of milk, and this is a subject for envy, and also the insufficient technical development, and we do lack technological developments for younger generation, and it creates problems on the international markets, and it limits us. And Alexander, please, you are running out of time, and challenges that we are facing also present us with opportunities. As always, natural resources are our opportunities, and governor of Kamchatka said that we would be striving to double our consumption by 2030. We have all the resources and prerequisites to reach such goals, and such events, together with stakeholders from HoReCa, from largest companies, fish processing companies that I'm representing today. I sincerely hope that our joint efforts will help us to achieve these goals, and Russia will be ranked higher in terms of fish consumption. We will use international best practices that we are currently studying quite attentively. We will cooperate with field-oriented bodies, organizations, and businesses. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, thanks to all of you. In conclusion, I'd like to say that overall, to enter new markets and to develop our domestic market, you have to take into consideration the specificity of each market, how you should supply fish, what it should look like. Let's eat more fish, and thanks everyone.